Hey Mancave, this is Bob from the Bob Zen Scale Mancave, and today is part 4 of how I'm building my Helix mountain. Today it's going to be putting on molded rock, and I'm also going to be using the shaper sheet plaster to harden up the shaper sheet so I have something a lot more rigid to adhere some rock to. And so you kind of need to do that, and especially when it's on a vertical wall. It makes things go a lot easier, and it keeps the shape that you wanted it in. Also, I'll be putting on some rock, coloring some of the rock, showing you how I glue it down. You know, there's a wide variety of ranges of choices to use. I've just chosen 1 or 2 right now, but the good thing is, if you want to tint your rock, I found some good stuff. This Quikrete cement tint, cement color. This is the black stuff. You do not want to use a lot of it. You probably only want to use maybe 1 drop for one of those small batches that you make. I also got this buff color. It's more of a kind of a reddish kind of color. They sell a gray, which I would rather have had gray, but you just can't buy it in the stores. Don't know why. They just think no one wants gray mortar mix color, I guess. Okay, as you can see, I have put all this gray plaster down on the shaper sheet. The first step I did was I took some water in a spray bottle, just kind of sprayed it out on the shaper sheet, made it wet, and then put down the plaster. And I'm going to put more of these rock castings on that I made. I got a bunch of these little ones are out here, and once I glue them on, which I'll take and I'll make some more plaster, just take it, coat the back of it. You may even want to sand these down to make them flatter if you're putting it on a nice flat space, but however you do it, just put some on the back, or just put it right where you want it, squeeze it on down, and it'll be in place. Now there's a number of different ways you can put down rock molds. First, make your mold, or you can take and fill this up with the wet plaster and just lay it down onto the space that you want it to be and push it down, and it'll mold in where it lays. And if it has a bend to it, you know, let's say you have a big pile of plaster right here on the corner, you want to make a nice jutting rock, just kind of put that right over the top of it, bend it, and it'll make your mold. I'm going to try that later after this stuff dries and hardens a little bit more. Probably not with this rock here, but I may do something with this one here. So that could be a nice experiment, and I'll show that to you if I decide to do that. What I also plan on doing is, I have a lot of these stratus rock kind of stuff. On the other panels that I have from a mountain, these will be going in, and I'll secure them just like I just told you, put some plaster or some scenic cement, scenic glue, it's scenic glue on the back, and push it in place. As long as you get this conforming the best you can to where it's going, the better it'll look. So during your experiments, if you have a lot of rough edges and stuff, it's probably best to put a wet mold onto the layout, and that way it molds right to the space that it's going to, and it sticks right where it's going to stick and stay there. So what I did was I put actually 6 ounces of water in here, 1 drop of the black tint. As you can see, it's pretty black just with 1. It's still see-through in the water, so that's going to make a lighter gray. and it should turn out pretty good. I have 12 ounces of Plaster of Paris, and I'm just going to mix it. It's a little soupy still. I may have to put some more Plaster of Paris in there. Keep adding a little bit at a time until you get the right consistency. You do want it a little bit thicker so it sticks and stays in the form as quick as possible, so you don't have to hold it there for very long. Still don't think it's quite thick enough. Probably put an extra 4 ounces in here, and it's starting to thick up here. And this is pretty full. And I kind of want it full so that it fills in all the other gaps and holes that I'm going to be putting this over. And okay, I've let this set up for a few minutes, probably about 3 or 4 minutes. And I put some wet water. I sprayed it down. Well, not wet water, just regular water. And then I'm just going to put this on here. And I'm going to probably have to hold this in place for a while, so just to make sure it sets up in place that where I want it and forms the kind of rock I'm looking for. This may have been a bad idea because it just drooled all over the place. Well, I'm going to hold this for a while and get back to you. Well, while I'm here, taking some of this extra mortar mix and filling in down in here and putting some of the castings already done in place. Okay, looks like it's setting up enough that I can let go and let it dry for a while longer before I pull that off and see what I get. It probably should have been a lot thicker before I put it on there. Probably should have let it dry a lot more. It's a first time attempt, so we'll see how this goes, and if I don't like it I can always carve it out and do something else with it. So, okay, I'm about ready to take that off. It's been sitting in the position that it's been in for about 20 minutes or so. It should be pretty hardened up, but not completely cured. So I'm going to try and take this off. Okay, as you can kind of see that it cracked part right up here, and this part here is not quite solid. It's actually chipping off. You know, this is falling off and so forth. So what I may end up doing here is seeing how it dries and putting some more plaster over in here. It did keep some of the rock formation in there, but you know, not as detailed as I would I have hoped for. It's supposed to kind of look like that, but obviously it's not looking like that. So I got a lot more experimenting to do, and I'll just fill in with some extra plaster and carve out what I don't need. and maybe stick some molded rock pieces that I have already in different areas. But it's going to turn out pretty well, I think. Well, as you can see, the pieces that were up here, they're all cracked earlier. They just kind of fell out. They didn't really dry in place. And so now I have a big old dip in there that's not quite dry. Well, it's dry, but it's not solid. And so I'm going to put in some more plaster in this area anyway and cover all this up and give it some sort of a better look. Okay, I'm letting a mold set up. I'm going to put it right here. I have some of the stuff drying right now to kind of make it easier to mold to it. Right now I'm going to put this rock mold right here with some of my extra. I'm going to get this on here fast before it completely sets up here and dries too much. Okay, that is drying. Now I'm going to put this other piece on here. And hold this in place and let it dry. Well, there you go. There's that other rock kind of molded into place. It did work out fairly well. It's still cracked and stuff in certain places, but I think I waited just a hair too long waiting for the plaster to set up, and probably should have gone when it was a little bit more wetter, but I would have had to stand there a lot longer holding it in place. I kind of gave up a little early, but there was a lot of chunks that were not quite molded to this part here, so that's why I was a little leery about this whole thing. It's a whole lot better to put something on a mold that has a flat surface, but this is not a terrible way to try it. Just got to break off some pieces here and there and kind of make it look like it's you know, broken chunks of rock or something that have fallen down, and I can put a lot of that stuff on there later as I go. The rock up here, as the waterfall comes down this way, this is pretty stuck on there right now. I've got some gaps down here underneath, which isn't too bad. I can always put in some more plaster down in here, and I'll be filling in some more rock down in this area anyway, so it's not going to look too bad. Well, Mancavians, that's the end of this episode, and we learned a lot. Learned a lot about plaster. We learned a lot about how to mix your plaster and maybe how to wait a little bit longer before you put your plaster down and kind of mold it into place to make a rock or a rock face or something. You learn something about some tinting. You know, if you're going to tint a lot of stuff, you got to have a plan, you got to have a mixture, you got to keep consistent, I think. Because I got 17 different tints of rock over here because different methods I chose to make the tint. You know, but the biggest thing is you can always cover it up with some paint, some ground foam, so forth and so forth, because it's going to be underneath something else. Make your rocks and stuff that are going to stand out and be away from the rest of the foliage and trees. Make those look good. The rest of it is just underneath, in case something falls off and you can kind of see some sort of color in there. And that's the biggest part that makes it look good. At least I hope so. Because truthfully, I've never done any of this before to this level. And so you're following along with my mistakes and my successes. You know, it is what it is. I wish I was a better artist, but I'm not. You know, I just make things work to the best of my ability. A lot of you are that way too, and own it, you know? Be proud of what you did, whether it looks good or looks bad. And as long as it makes you happy, you know, it's your railroad, your rules. So, stay tuned for the next episode. I think it's going to be a doozy, but I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I haven't figured out what it's going to be yet. But I have an idea. Till next time, happy model railroading, stay off them tracks, and leave a comment and a thumbs up. So if you like what you saw here today, go ahead and click subscribe down here below, or follow my Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and my Instagram, links down here below in the comments. Also, click on one of my other links for videos as well. As always, Mancavians, happy model railroading, stay off the tracks. Bye.